What's up and welcome back to my channel. My name's Jacqueline and today is my March wrap-up video. So I read a total of 8 books in March, which is actually pretty good or pretty normal. My goal is to read 100 for the whole entire year, and so I've been trying to definitely hit that 8 to 9 goal every single month. Because I've seen a lot of other booktubers doing a bunch of stats in their video, I decided I actually wanted to start doing that. And if you've been watching some of my videos before, some of my older wrap-ups, you know that I was doing a vlog style of wrap-up, but I'm actually going to start incorporating hopefully weekly vlogs, and so that way you can hear my thoughts right when I'm reading a book during that actual week, and they'll go up every week. But then I'm reverting back to the normal wrap-up style, where this is just kind of a broad, just a little review of all the books that I read this whole entire month. So I read 8 books for March, and that equaled 2,741 pages, which I've never even added up all the pages before, so I don't even know what I normally, how many normal pages I read. So I thought that the stats are pretty cool. Plus I'm keeping it in an actual notebook. I do want to start writing down notes and kind of annotating books, since I'm using my Kindle a lot and I don't like writing in books. I figured I would try and use a whole notebook system. So if you have an actual system for that, let me know down below, because I would love to start that. So I read 5 thrillers, 2 new adult romances, and 1 nonfiction for this month, which it doesn't even feel like I've read that many thrillers. I don't even know. I was just tired of thrillers there for, I think it was after January, but I think now I've just gotten back into them, and I just want to read a whole bunch. And so I've really been in a thriller mood recently. Okay, so the first book that I read was Hunting Annabelle, and I actually had started this at the very end of February, but I never got to finish it. So March 1st, I finished it. And I actually did this book. I rated it 4 stars. It was a little hard getting into at first and a little slow in the beginning, so that's why I rated it 4 stars, but the shocking twist at the end made it to be worth 4 stars. A lot of my friends really loved this book, and I mean, it was a good read. I just didn't feel as connected to the story as I do sometimes in thrillers. So the story is about this guy who had been convicted of doing weird things, or stalking or murder or something like that beforehand, and he was hanging out with this girl named Annabelle, and then all of a sudden she disappeared, and he saw her be kidnapped, but no one was believing him. And so it goes through the whole story of what happened to her, him being crazy or seemingly crazy. And the ending just kind of really blew my mind, because I didn't think that the ending was going to be the ending, and so that was really cool. Wow, that's the part that I loved the most about the story. The next book I read was Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, and I literally loved this book. This is my favorite book that I've read in March, and also possibly my favorite book that I've read so far in 2019. And I have to thank Gabby from Gabby Reads for recommending this book, because otherwise I would have never picked this book to read. Just based on the cover, it doesn't seem like a book that I would read, and I'm such a cover person. I know, it's crazy. And I decided to read it. It's a taboo romance from this younger girl and this way older guy who also is her boyfriend's dad. And so it's so crazy. I loved it. It was so hot. And I actually have a whole ranting, raving, chatting, drinking video about it, so I'll link that up above in case you want to see my more in-depth thoughts. But if you love any type of romance, especially taboo romance, I highly suggest that you read this book, because it blew my mind. I loved it so much. Then I read The Stillwater Girls by Minka Kent. This is my first book by Minka Kent, and I ended up giving it 5 stars. I loved it. It was about these sisters that lived in this isolated cabin, and they decide, because of circumstances, their mom and their other sister had went into the woods and disappeared, and they were running out of food and stuff, so they decided to go into the woods, and they find out that the whole their whole lives that they were living were lies. Like their mom was just lying to them, and it was just so crazy. I love the survival like aspect to it, and so if you like any type of book like that, I highly suggest you read it. It kind of reminded me of The Village by M. Night Shyamalan, and I just really adored this book. I read it on NetGalley. It was a read now. I believe it's coming out in June, but if that's not the case, I'll put the date down below so that way you guys know when it's going to be released. But I highly suggest that you read it. It was amazing. Then another NetGalley read that I read was I Know You by Annabelle Cantaria, and again, this was a 5-star read. I actually liked it a little bit better than Stillwater Girls because it was just a totally different like aspect, but this one was almost like the perfect mother, Big Little Lies, and You all wrapped in together. It was amazing. It was a pretty long book. I think it was like 384 pages, but I flew through it in like a day. I was driving down to my clogging convention, and I ended up like reading it. I wasn't the driver, believe me. I was reading in the car, and I just remember like I loved this book. It was also read now on NetGalley, and in case you're interested in this review or the Stillwater Girls, I have a full like thriller review of those. I'll link that up above in case you want to hear more. I go into more depth of the story, no spoilers or anything, but just more in depth. And the nonfiction book that I read was Woman Code, and this one was just about healing your hormones. I ended up giving it 3 stars, and I tried to do the whole liver cleanse that was outlined in it, and that did not go well for me. So I didn't really like the foods that she was suggesting to eat. They don't follow with my like keto lifestyle, and they don't make my body feel good. But the information in it dealing with periods and cycles and stuff was actually really good information. So if you don't know anything about your body, I do think that this book was good. Like I did get some tidbits. It just wasn't the best like fertility book or women's hormone book that I've ever read. If you are looking for something like that, I highly suggest Taking Charge of Your Fertility. I loved that book and I learned so much from it when I read it. Then the next book that I read was I Know Who You Are by Alice Feeney, and I ended up giving this 4 stars, and I'm hoping to talk about it in a thriller video in the future. It was absolutely crazy nuts, and the ending I know a lot of people were upset about because it is a very like gross, disgusting, like disturbing type of ending. But since I read a lot of thrillers, I guess I didn't I guess I wasn't as like upset about that as some other people, but I was a little upset that like just how the book turned out. Like I was confused. I didn't really get the answers that I wanted, and so that's why I did rate it 4 stars. It did really blow my mind though, and so I do think that especially if you loved Alice Feeney's like first book, and if you like disturbing books, I do think that you should give this one a chance and read it just for the sake of having something to discuss about it. I cannot wait to discuss this with my book club. It's going to be our read for May, and so I think that it's going to be so interesting having everyone's different like opinions and tastes like come together. So excited about that. And the next book I read was My Favorite Half Nightstand by Christina Lauren. This is the second Christina Lauren book that I've read, and I only rated it 2 stars. It was just, for a new adult romance book, it just is too juvenile for me. The characters were supposed to be in their like late 20s and early 30s, and just some of the things that they did just sounded like they were 15 and in high school dating, but the storyline was kind of cute. It involves some online dating where 2 best friends are, you know, they kind of like each other, but they don't want to obviously say that they like each other, and then they end up getting matched together, and it's just this whole like really cute storyline. I just feel like I need to read something that's a little bit more grown up, so that's why I rated it low. It's not because of like the book was bad or the writing style was bad or anything like that. It just wasn't something that I found interesting. I kind of was like bored through it. So that's why. And then the last book that I read in March was A Stranger on the Beach. And this was another NetGalley read, and I love Michelle Campbell. I did only rate it 4 stars just because her books, and I think I've rated all of her books 4 stars, or maybe just one. I think I rated It's Always the Husband as a 4 star, and then She Was a Quiet One, I think might have been 5 stars, but then this one's a 4 star. It's just, her books are very predictable, so there's not really any twists or turns that you don't really see coming. You can kind of predict all of that, but she has such an easy reading thriller like writing style, and I love that. So I always get swept in her books right away. It's super easy to read them, and so I just really love that. I love her writing style, which is one of the reasons why I do rate the books higher than I would if it was just the storyline, you know, like if it was so predictable but from another person's like perspective. So this book is about a stranger that this lady meets on the beach, and her husband are like going through a rough spot. She thinks that he cheated on her, so she ends up like having this fling with this stranger, and then he turns into this like clingy, stalking, like almost like serial killing type weirdo. And the whole entire story, like I do love the perspective of the narrator. It's just, that was kind of actually like intriguing, and I'll talk more about this hopefully in a thriller like review video, so I don't want to give too much of it away, but it was pretty interesting how the storyline went. I just did see some of it coming. So if you like Michelle Campbell or you like the whole easy light thrillers, then I suggest that you read this. So that is all for my reading wrap up for March. I did pretty well. I feel like I liked a bunch of the books, so that was really good, but I'm just super excited to read my books for April, and I already finished one and it was actually pretty good, and I can't wait to talk about it. And so if you haven't seen my TBR video, definitely check that link. I'll try and pop it up above. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in another bookish video. Bye everyone.